So this morning we are continuing in this incredible talk by Rob Bell called Everything is Spiritual. And really he is busy slowly exploring those four fundamental questions that sit at the root of everybody that shapes their ideas, their thoughts, their patterns. Those questions need to be answered from a godly perspective, which is part of our Christian discipleship. Who am I? Where am I? What's gone wrong? And what is the solution? And as the next part of this talk brilliantly unfolds and brilliantly begins to move forward, think carefully with what Rob is saying and the conclusion he gets to. Again, it is deep, profound, unbelievable. So just before we dive into the next part of the talk, and at the end of it, I'm just going to close in prayer. Let's start by saying the Jesus Creed out loud together. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And the second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There are no commands greater than these. The next part of this talk, let's watch together.
Now, the universe that we live in is a self-transcending reality. So here's what that means. Our universe, for 13 billion years, keeps moving beyond itself. It keeps making more. And it isn't just that our universe continues to move beyond itself to make more, and it's been doing this for billions and billions and billions of years, but it does it in a number of very specific, particular ways. Number one, the universe for 13 billion years has been increasing in complexity. Atoms are more complex than particles. Molecules are more complex than atoms. Cells are more complex than molecules, and a person is more complicated than a cell. The whole thing for 13 billion years has been getting more and more complicated, which I would argue is the less probable direction. Would you agree? If you leave some paint cans in your garage, you don't come out in the morning, there's a mural on the wall, right? You leave a bunch of baking supplies in your kitchen cabinet, you don't come out in the morning and there's like a cake on the counter. That's not generally the direction that things go. But for 13 billion years, the universe has been increasing in complexity. But it isn't just complexity, it's also been increasing in depth. Particles only have the depth of particles, but atoms have the depth of particles. Molecules have the depth of atoms, and atoms have the depth of particles. Each successive unfolding layer in this emergent phenomenon we know to be life itself adds another layer of depth as it unfolds. But now, it isn't just depth, it's what happens when atoms bond together with other atoms. When you get atoms bonding with other atoms, you don't just get a group of atoms, you get something new, a molecule that has qualities and characteristics that aren't present at the earlier level. You put a bunch of particles together, you don't just get a group of particles, you get something called atoms that have all sorts of characteristics and qualities that aren't present at the earlier component level. Now here's why this is interesting. It's a beautiful day, and you're at a park, and you're laying on a blanket, and you look up, and a flock of birds flies overhead. And they bank to the left, and they bank to the right, and they swoop down and around, and they go lower and lower, and then they arc up, all of them in unison. Which bird is giving directions? Which bird is saying left, left, right, right, up, down, backwards? Which bird is using Waze? Now, if you were to take each bird individually out of the flock, you would not find its brain making any decisions about which direction the flock will go. You could take bird after bird out of the flock, and you could not locate the decision making. But when birds fly together, a communal mind emerges in their midst that makes the decisions about whether they go to the right or the left. You cannot locate this communal mind in any single bird, but when birds fly together, it emerges in their midst. This is called holism or emergence, or my favorite term for it, epiphenomena. This is what happens when the earlier component parts are added together, and in their bonding together, something new is created that has properties and characteristics that cannot be identified at the earlier component level. Now, what does this have to do with you and I? How many of you have been betrayed? Yes. The rest of you, where do you live? Can we move there? Some of you are like, yes, Rob, I have. That's why I'm leaning forward. The knife is still in there. Where do you store that betrayal? Where do I keep it? Well, the obvious answer, or the answer most of us, my heart. So you're telling me, if we were to rip your rib cage open, which would hurt, and we were to pull out your heart, and we were to go searching for the thing that happened with that person, the thing you said, the thing they said, how it was raining that night, how you stormed out of the apartment, the country song that was playing on the radio on the way home, we would not be able to locate that betrayal anywhere in your physicality, correct? How many of you have hopes and dreams for your kids? How many of you have goals for your career? Yes. Fear, doubt, worry, stress, anxiety, euphoria, hope, joy, longing, desire. Where are these stored in your physicality? Could we take you apart and find out your opinions about ice cream? And yet, these attributes, responses, feelings, opinions, experiences, wounds, longings, joys, these are what most essentially make you, you, and yet we cannot locate the elements that most uniquely make you, you, anywhere in your physicality. You take a bunch of cells and you put them together and you get a person. But the essential elements of a person that make a person uniquely a person cannot be identified at the earlier level. And the universe has been unfolding in this fashion for billions and billions of years, with increasing holism, emergence, and epiphenomena, in which each new layer in the unfolding of the universe births new qualities and characteristics that cannot be identified at the earlier component level. But it's not just depth, and it's not just complexity. The universe is also increasing in unity. Particles bond with other particles of similar in essence and substance to make something new, bigger, and beyond themselves, atoms. Atoms bond with other atoms of similar essence and substance to create something new, molecules that the universe has never seen before. Molecules bond with other molecules of similar essence and substance. Each thing bonds with others of similar essence and substance to be a part of something bigger than themselves that has new properties that haven't yet emerged in the universe. Have you ever said, I just want to be a part of something bigger than myself? So does everything in the universe. We say it, I just want to be a part of something bigger than myself, because we've had this moment of revelation or epiphany, or I just don't want to be selfish and self-centered. Great. Everything in the freaking universe wants to be a part of something bigger than itself. Imagine if there was an atom that was like, I'm not bonding with other atoms, that's dumb. The story of the universe would be about 3 minutes long, and there wouldn't be anybody to hear it. It would hold the whole thing up from its natural forward movement. Is this why loneliness is such a deep ache in the bones of humanity? Because something deep within us tells us that loneliness isn't the direction the universe is headed. Is this why racism is so toxic and destructive? Each component bonds with others of similar essence and substance to create something new. Racism is the failure to bond with another of similar essence and substance. It's not just immoral, it's not just unjust, it's not just wrong and degrading to what it means to be human beings. It's going the opposite direction from the direction the universe has been headed for 13 billion years. Are you with me now? Yeah. Oh, by the way, side note, this is why fundamentalism rubs you the wrong way. And you got into that throwdown with your brother, Fox News brother-in-law at Thanksgiving, and it got so awkward, and you were like, ugh, you didn't quite know what to say, but at some sort of energetic level, you just knew that that argument was crap. Anybody know what I'm talking about? But you started arguing it, and you just couldn't do it. Fundamentalism often has as its animating energy, or its animating set of beliefs, that there is a perfect, pristine time and place somewhere back there. And if we could just get back there and do it like they used to do it in that perfect, pristine place, if we could just take this town, city, country, government, church back at its core. And the reason why sometimes you didn't have the right words for it and you were trying to be a real smart person, but you got all tongue-tied and peanut butter mouth, but you were like, you just knew that the argument was rubbish, even though you didn't quite know how to intellectually argue it, is because at some level, energetically, you were disturbed because the fundamental energy was the future is back there somewhere, but that's the wrong direction. The universe only knows how to go one direction, which has been going for 13.8 billion years, and that is forward. The universe has been increasing. The universe has been increasing in complexity, depth, and unity for 13 billion years at least, the whole thing being pulled forward. And then, 13 billion years into the story, human beings show up on the scene. And human beings become aware that they're aware. 13 billion years into the life of the universe, this complex life form arises that becomes aware that it's aware, that develops the ability to reflect on its own existence, that begins to ponder, wonder, analyze, talk about meaning, purpose, significance, hope. Human beings develop something called consciousness. By the way, if you're one of the first people to develop consciousness, what do you point to? Like, hey, check this out. What? This. What do you mean by this? I know. We're dinosaurs saying things like, I just don't feel fulfilled in my work. Was there a water buffalo on the Serengeti being chased by a pack of hyenas going, ugh, this blows? Do cliffs regret? Do oysters worry? Does moss wonder? Do stars dream? Or, as the 12th century Sufi mystic Rumi said, what does a rock know of April? Rumi in the house. I love it. So weird and awesome. So now some would argue that consciousness is actually an interior dimension to all cellular life, therefore leaving room for all sorts of gradients of consciousness, which would explain certain levels of consciousness in animals, etc. Nevertheless, at some point with human beings, consciousness reached such a tipping point of complexity that you had human beings developing this ability to stand outside of themselves and ponder, analyze, feel loss, emptiness, meaning, significance. And it doesn't arise in the story until really, really, really late in the game. Have you ever found yourself driving to work thinking, what is the point of this? Yes. Where did you get this idea that your life should be something other than what it is? Where did you get the idea that your life should be more? Where did you get the idea that there should be explanations for your suffering, answers for your questions? Where did any of us get the idea that this should be fair, just, equitable, that it should make sense, that it should be beautiful, that it should mean something? Where did any of us get this sense that our life should be something other than what it is? The question isn't why do you roll your eyes? We all know why you roll your eyes. Sheila talks too much in meetings. The much more interesting, I'm glad you like that, by the way. Much more interesting question isn't why do you roll your eyes? The question is how do you roll your eyes? You roll your eyes because the thing that you are experiencing you think should be something else. Where did you get this idea that this thing should be something other than what it is? Just the capacity to have that reflective thought doesn't occur until 13 billion years into the life of the universe. And it's not just despair, wonder, longing for beauty, justice, equality. It also works on all sorts of other levels. For example, how many of you on a regular basis, maybe a Saturday night, the weekend, how many of you head downtown for a child sacrifice just to keep the traditions alive? You just laughed at a child sacrifice joke. That's kind of awesome. Yeah, you don't. How many of you are against slavery? Yeah. All hands raised would be kind of nice, I'll be honest with you, right there. Just hoping for 100% on that one. Yeah, feel a lot better. A little lonely there for a second up here. Yes, of course. Imagine if you came in tonight and you're waiting for things to start and you're chatting up the person next to you and you're like, oh, you ever been to this theater? And they're like, no, I was really bothered when I came in. You were? Why? Well, I came in, there's only one drinking fountain in the back. I kind of like my theaters to have two drinking fountains for people of two different skin colors. You'd be like, what the fuck? What? Come on, go! What? Or as the French would say, quoi? You'd be like, what is... And yet, people used to practice child sacrifice. And slavery was practiced in this nation within a couple of hundred years ago. And an establishment, a theater like this, even a generation ago might have had two drinking fountains. So what is it within you that looks backwards to things that at one time were totally normal, commendable, standard ways of doing things, and you now see them as abhorrent, destructive, immoral, toxic, and in many cases, rightfully illegal? What is going on that things that people used to do, you now look back on with profound disdain and sometimes even anger and say, thank God that we've moved forward from that? And yet, in the same breath in which we look back on all the things that we are so grateful that we moved on from, we also have to look forward, because within us we know that there are lots of things that are happening right now that aren't right, and we long for the day when we leave those behind. Are you with me? Yeah. So what you just did is you affirmed some sort of trajectory or arc. You affirmed some sense that human beings were here. We are moving along at different speeds. We are moving along. Thank God for the movement. We are grateful for how far we've come, and yet in the same breath, we have to affirm the need to keep going. What do you call this? Why is progress deep in your bones an awareness that that is worse, this is better, and yet we still have a better up ahead. Or, as the great French paleontologist Desjardins said, and if you're going to have a title, be a French Jesuit paleontologist. Desjardins said, progress is the soul of the universe. How beautiful is that? Pierre Teilhard Desjardins. Progress is the soul of the universe. Why is the whole thing moving forward? Why for 13 billion years has the whole thing been increasing in complexity? Greater and greater complexity, increased depth, greater emergence, holism, more and more epiphenomenon in which each new layer develops properties and characteristics not present at the earlier component level, greater and greater unity, things bonding with others of similar essence and substance to be a part of something beyond and greater than themselves. Why did consciousness reach a tipping point in which this particular phenomenon, human beings, began to develop the ability to become aware that they're aware? Why do you have this sense that some things are wrong and we ought to leave them behind, and yet in the same breath you affirm the need to keep going? What is pulling the whole thing forward? What do you call this? What is this? How does it work? Why does it work? Why does this universe have a fundamental drive to self-transcend over and over and over again for billions and billions and billions of years?
Mind-blowing? Very much so. Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. Lead us not down the road of temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, power, and glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. God bless you as you ponder just a little bit of what Rob is talking about.